I'll concede your point just for brevity. But
What? Brevity? We don't do that around here. It's probably
No.
Citrus, or what is a Capital One Bowl? It used to be Citrus Bowl, right?
oh my
Capital
God,
One.
dude, where have you been?
I just like the real name.
It hasn't been the Citrus Bowl since like what, 2002?
What was your highlight side dish from Thanksgiving?
Oh gosh, Scotch.
This is the Buck Around, the podcast devoted to all things Wisconsin Badger football from a fan perspective. Featuring your hosts, Richard Branch and Maxwell Brusky.
And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Buck Around. Welcome back to episode 330 of the Buck Around. I am one half of the Buck Around, Richard Branch, joined, as always, by my, I am going to say, wounded colleague, because it could apply in a lot of different ways. Maxwell Brusky. Max, how are you?
I'm good. My voice, not so much. I thought you were going to say vocally challenged, colleague.
That's too on the nose. It's not obvious enough.
So no, I lost my voice this on Saturday. I probably lost a fair amount of it by halftime. But that's how this came to be.
Yeah.
And it didn't really do a lot of good. Most of it was yelling at Chez.
So I guess we just say apologies to the audience for what they have to suffer through. But I think in some ways they can feel your pain, just because if the talk around was any indication, your, I think, anger and frustration was shared by many.
I think so. It's appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah, it fits well.
Because I just want to say, if I may indulge myself, and, now I've got you with a wounded voice, so you can't really say no. I don't always put together the talk around anymore. Like, you and I started splitting it. And then when Cody entered the picture, we sort of were like, Cody, here, this is for you too. And poor Cody has taken on that mantle as well. But I do like to think of myself, I am not just a podcast host, Max. I am not just a commentator on the world of Badger football. I like to think of myself as an artist, if I may be so bold.
Artiste.
Yes, I am an artiste. I am an artiste of splicing together voicemail. And I just want to give a thank you before we play this talk around to my new muse, who is Jonathan in DC, who, first off, I think sent me 27 irate direct messages. Maybe it was fewer, but it was a lot. But then capped it off a few hours later with one of my favorite talk around messages we have ever received, which I have, to the best of my ability, interspliced throughout this montage of our listeners' thoughts, where you get to listen to Jonathan descend into I don't know what else to call it, but abject rage. He's mad at everything. And Jonathan, you are fantastic. So I think without further ado, we just hit play in the talk around, and then we get into this unique experience that was the Alabama game that we haven't even mentioned occurred yet. I like that it's just the event that has gone unmentioned, but we just know that's what we're here to talk. I mean, obviously it's what we're here to talk about, but there's a lot of trauma, Max. Why don't we hit play when you're ready?
I just want everyone to know that I made a great personal sacrifice on behalf of the Badgers today. I trucked my ass over to a bar at 9 a.m. for the kickoff and had a beer or two. Watched the Badgers play Bama, despite the fact that I have Beer Olympics tonight. My 35-year-old body can't handle both Beer Olympics and a Badger game on the same day. Steve from Portland. Ryan from Seattle.
Lucas calling from Nashville. Rob in Madison here.
This is Chad from DC. I wasn't going to call. I screamed. My wife said I'd calm down enough that I could call and talk about it.
The air raid, the dairy raid, whatever you want to call it, don't let anybody call it that anymore.
I'm happy, I think, that Braden Locke is playing.
I thought the offensive line played well.
Chesna Lucy, I think it's time to put him back on the shelf. Maybe put all these guys back on the shelf, except for Cade Yakinelli, and let's start playing the freshmen.
Braden Locke looked like it was the first time he had ever come into a college game.
We literally fired Paul Chris for running the ball into a stacked box over and over and over and over again.
I like Braden Locke, but I just don't understand why he can't throw the ball over the line of scrimmage.
Well, the Badgers had 150 rushing yards, so Is the offense bad?
I figured it out. It's the Cade raid.
The Badgers disappointed. That's not true. They didn't disappoint me. I expected them to get their punched in.
I think the most deflating thing is this team just does not seem any better.
Honest. The beat reporters aren't honest. Fake news media isn't honest. No one's being honest about anything.
I thought the secondary was the strength of this team. They even got shelled here in big moments.
Wide receivers are not able to get open, and yet Indiana's able to score points.
I think any of the improvements they made to the roster have even shown. I feel like I'm having the same argument I had with Jaheim Thomas as I did with Jordan Turner.
What is Chris McIntosh doing? He has set us up, and this is his bed to sleep in, but he's brought us all with it, and at this point. But I do want to specifically call out the stupid assholes on Twitter, like Badger and that from Sentinel. That piece of shit. Those assholes have no idea what they're talking about.
Wisconsin.
I'm just happy it's a bye week. It's not going to ruin my trip.
I assume better days are ahead. My wife was wrong. I was not calm enough to call on Wisconsin.
My wife was wrong. I was not calm enough to call. I just like how that builds. I don't know if people could understand through all the beeping because we were trying to keep the clean rating here.
I know it sounded like downtown Chicago.
But there were Twitter accounts catching strays in there. There were media members catching strays. I mean, there was a lot going on in there, and I hope Jonathan is in a better place now.
Well, I hope Jonathan is going to find the honesty that he's looking for on this show.
Okay. So, yeah, Jonathan, thank you. And thank you to everyone who called. I'm sorry that after a week off, the TalkAround came back and, for such negative circumstances. But it's good to hear people and take the temperature of the fan base, as always.
It is, but I will, like, I think what we did have a good line in there. I like the Cade raid.
The Cade raid?
That's good.
I was mostly worried about Ryan in Seattle going to Beer Olympics. But I just want Ryan, I want you to know, Beer Olympics can exist until about 42. That's where I had to stop. I think it was partially the COVID year ended our annual Beer Olympics that we had with some friends here. It hasn't come back since. But yeah, you start the diminishing returns in that event. I mean, especially because you're like, there's inevitably some sort of physical injury that comes with the feeling that you have the next day, like you'll twist something. So you've got like 6 more of them in you before you have to retire. Just a little.
Those are referred to as drunk injuries.
Yeah,
in my house.
Yeah, those are my words to the wise. But all right, so let's get into this game, Max. We've danced around this. We've tried to distract everybody with irate voicemails and life advice, but we can't avoid it anymore. Let's just get right to the big part, I think.
I will, but I want to give you my overarching theme though. I had was there and saw it and saw the momentum change, and I know we're going to talk about some big plays that happened. But man, I didn't think they got like out physicaled, and I really didn't. I wasn't even sure, and I was more sure on Saturday, maybe less sure as time's gone on. I don't even know how much they got out athlete, like not. Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams, and Ryan Williams he's a freshman phenom. I mean, he's the next great Bama receiver, first round guy, right? But other than that, I didn't feel like it's not like they didn't belong on the same field. You know what I mean? Or at least that's how I felt.
So,
and the reason that the game went the way it did was more because they did not play sound football. They didn't play smart football. They didn't play sound football. They made so many mistakes and shot themselves in the foot in a game where you absolutely had to be, as clean as you possibly can and miss field goals, fumbles. They didn't even have that many penalties, but the penalties they did have just came at just horrific times. I mean, Alabama had, what did they wind up with? 8 penalties? Alabama played pretty sloppy.
And I'm looking at the box score here. But yeah, they had a significant number.
Yeah. I mean, they played pretty sloppy, and I kept saying too, and I got some agreement to whoever I was talking to, but I just felt like if Alabama plays like that when they come off the bye and play Georgia, they're not going to win.
They had 4 penalties for 40 yards.
4 for 40. Gosh,
Yeah.
I would have thought it was 8.
But
Because there
two
were a
of
couple
them,
really bad ones too.
yeah, 2 of them were for first downs. I think that's probably why they stick out in your head.
And then I think to get to the first part or the first item you have in the agenda, unless you wanted to give an overarching, theme too, or, had any overarching thoughts before we got into specifics, was we didn't even see Tyler Van Dyke get hurt. From where I was sitting, it's obviously, we were about 6 rows right below the press box. So it's kind of funny after the game, we kind of looked up there and Matt LePay and Mark Tauscher are up there. It's like, oh, that's Mark Tauscher. I didn't realize we were that close. And from where we saw that, a couple people texted me and said, TVD is out. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't see, he got tackled on the sideline, but we couldn't see anything that looked out of the ordinary. And the only time I knew that Van Dyke was out was when they got the ball back on the next offensive series. And I said, that's number 18. That's not Tyler Van Dyke. So I don't know. So the question that you say, or the way you're posting it, is did the loss of Tyler Van Dyke alter the game? I honestly really didn't think so at the time, but in retrospect, I really think so. And when I've talked to people that aren't as, close to the stuff as we are, but people who watch the game, it was a game. It was the main game on Saturday. Like, oh gosh, when you guys lost your quarterback, I mean, I didn't think, I thought that changed the game for you. So,
I do. So like, there's 2 parts to it. I have never been a big Tyler Van Dyke guy on this podcast, obviously.
Right.
Or I had
me.
I feel like I had an idea in my head of what I thought he was going to be or how he fits as a piece. But I think the situation Saturday is slightly different in that you lose him. I mean, I think he played 7 snaps, right? Let's see, 1, 2.
Well, it was the first
3,
series.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 7 or 8 snaps. I'm not going to count them. Nobody wants to listen to me read numbers off. But you lose him in the first series, and you have built and prepped throughout the week a game plan for him. And Braden Locke, put aside better or worse player for now. I mean, we'll get to that. But the skill set's different. Like, Braden Locke's not a mobile guy. Braden Locke was clearly, you could see it on the broadcast. And I think even Klatt said it. It just looked like they didn't trust him to run the zone read. They didn't let him pull the ball. And so they had all this stuff installed for this game that was prepped and ready to run, that I think if they'd known Braden Locke was going to be the quarterback, that wouldn't have been what they prepped and installed during the week, or for that matter, wouldn't have been what they've been doing for the past, 3 games or 2+ games.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because he's not mobile. I mean, it's not like Tyler Van Dyke is Mr. Fleet of Foot, but I get what he does just enough to kind of keep it honest. And
they do a lot with him in the running game.
Yeah. And I don't think Braden Locke's going to be doing that. So, you get that 4th and 1 that made everybody irate. I mean, you were at the game, but I will tell you, watching it on TV and sort of following along on social stuff, people were nuts over that 4th and 1 where they got stuffed.
The people I was around were the same thing. So I was there with one of my brothers, and then two friends from out of town that go to football games. And so, they're football fans, but not Badger people, right? And the guy next to me, who's an NC State fan and a big NC State guy, his son actually played in the Final Four last year. Anyway, he said, he's like, "What the hell are you doing lining up in the shotgun? Like, what are you doing?" Going for it, I think we were all good with that. And what really sucked is that the way Bama had set up before the review, they had 2 down linemen or 2. Their line wasn't ready to go. If they'd snapped that ball right away and walked up to the line, that was first down and then some. It was easy. They would have got it, no problem.
Yeah.
And then there was the delay, and then they ran that dumb play.
Well, I'm never going to be play calling guy, because they also ran the exact same thing later on 4th and 1 and first. Like, nobody seems to really recognize that.
No, I know.
It was the same formation
we were up about that.
and the same play. I mean, it was the same formation, same personnel package, same play. I think the reality was that was designed to be something you'd run with Tyler Van Dyke where he could pull the ball. And I think with Locke in there, they just, Alabama didn't respect it until he was going to show it, and then he never showed it, so they never respected it. So yeah, fine. I mean, you can, and you know what? People want to yell and scream about get under center. That's fine. I don't think they trusted him to run a sneak. Quite frankly, I don't.
No, I don't think so either.
Not that quick. I mean, he was, I think, 8 snaps into it. Well, a little more than that, but say he was 9 snaps, 10 snaps into his first playing time of the season, because they had, I mean, I can tell you 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 there. Yeah, he was like 7, 8 snaps. Again, I'm doing counting. Why am I counting so much? You know, he wasn't that far into playing in this game, and he hadn't found his footing yet as much as he was going to find it in this game, and really looked a little tight and a little ragged. So I think that's what they thought the best thing they had. They did go under center later. So, I mean, if you want to beat the play calling people, that's fine.
So I don't remember when that was. And friend of the show, Carl, I was with him after the game. Carl, yeah. He said that too. I don't remember seeing it under center. Was it just one time?
Yep, it was 3rd and goal. It was on the touchdown to Pauling. So when they got the touchdown
that's a prop.
As a prop, and it hit.
Yeah.
So on the, so he hit, that prop hit, but they ran, basically, they lined up 7 wide on the line of scrimmage with 2 tight ends. Jackson Aker in as a running back who it was a lead blocker for, I think it was Walker. And they didn't get enough. They didn't get in the end zone, and then they threw the ball to Pauling. But so if you wanted to see that, I guess, but I don't think that was going to be something they practiced and were ready to run in the middle of the field, quite simply. And I don't know.
Agreed. Yeah,
so
agree with that.
I get if you want to, I guess I'm not defending anything. I just think my only frustration is when it's like, well, this is easy. You know how to do this. This is easy. And it's like, well, that's why I don't like to be play calling guy. And there are other factors, and there's context to it. And I think a lot of the context was that's Braden Locke sitting there. I think, honestly, if Tyler Van Dyke was there, they might have just ran a sneak with him. He's a big boy. But
I think they might have done that. I think they might have too.
So
and the worst part of it was that they had the review, and they were lined up to go for it, and they went for a review.
Yeah.
And had they done that, they would have got it, no problem.
But I do think what the loss of Tyler Van Dyke did was end up with a quarterback, with a game plan built around a quarterback who didn't have the skill set to match the game plan. I think, and that's really what it is. As for Braden Locke himself, like, I know a lot of people are like, done, I'm out, I'm finished. And
I'm close.
I get it.
I'm close.
I don't really have a opinion on it at this point, just because, again, it was for that exact reason. I don't think he's going to be anything great. I mean, you know what? He's going to be the star. Here's the other thing. I have no interest in seeing maybe Matoya play this year. I really don't. I don't think there's any reason to put that guy in there.
Sure.
I really have a hard time believing he's going to be any better than this, whatever this turns into, because...
By this, you mean Locke.
By Locke. I mean, here's the thing. Locke's numbers, right? He was 13 for 26, 125 yards, 4.8 per attempt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last year against Ohio State, he was 18 for 39 for 164, 4.2. I mean, it's basically a 1 and 0 in both games. 1 touchdown, 0 picks. He kind of looks like the same dude right now. I'll be interested to see what he looks like.
I think that's frustrating.
Well, what I was going to say is I'll be interested to see what he looks like when he's not thrown in cold, when there's a little bit of, like, he has 2 weeks to prep. So I will reserve all of my judgment, until you get a couple weeks. He's never going to be a world-beating quarterback, but he could follow a very Jack Cohn-ish trajectory in my mind, which is, I mean, he's not a big guy. I mean, they can list him at 6 feet. He is a very small 6 feet tall. He's in Nate White height range. Like, he's in the Will Pauling world of 6 feet tall or 5. I mean, he's not a big boy.
5'10.5".
Yeah. And I mean, there's plenty in that game that gave me pause.
He didn't get tipped passes. He had batted passes.
Yes.
There were at least 3 of them that I can remember.
Yep.
He missed open guys. He missed fired. And I don't care about the game plan. I don't care about, that doesn't apply as far as I'm concerned. Like,
oh no, he missed throws.
Which is, it's ridiculous. And that's part of the unsound football that I'm talking about. I mean, there's missed throws, there's batted passes. I think there was 1 drop, but that on a pass thrown by him. And then there was the CJ Williams one where he hits that thing. that might be that. I don't know if that was a touchdown necessarily, but that play was good for 50, 60 yards.
Which one?
Kind of that slant that CJ Williams had.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking the
And
ones
it was a little behind him. It would have been tough for NFL.
Oh, I know the one
NFL
exactly which one you're talking about.
Catch that one, and that's on lock. Like, dude, come on.
That was early. That was one of the first
early
4 or 5 throws.
I get it. But you played 4 games last year. That's inexcusable.
Oh no.
Now I'm going to start to get mad and lose my voice again because this is how I felt on
That's
Saturday.
not what I was suggesting. What I was trying to remember, because to me, the two that stick out were, it was, the missed one to Tretch and the missed one to Pauling.
Yes. And the Paul. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm talking about in addition to those two.
Yeah, no. I know. I mean, I think I would sum him up in that game as a dude who looked really tight. And as a guy who, the other part of it that was a little weird to me was he had aside from the batted balls, the complete sort of lack of a feel in the pocket and backing into the defensive line. I mean, when he got crushed and had the fumble, I mean, the one that they recovered.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're kind of like, that felt very, again, to go back to one of my favorite terms, he looked very baby deer in a lot of those situations.
That's all these things with him were part of the not sound football that I saw on Saturday, and I would expect a lot more. I would expect a lot more from a second-year player. I get he's not the starter, but I would expect a lot more than that. And even if it's an ability question or a game plan question, I wouldn't expect those basic things to be messed up a lot of times. That fumble, I mean, he held the ball for God knows how long. He's looking downfield. I mean, I just that one boggled my mind. Like, you're supposed to be like, he knows the playbook, like, if you're gonna make up for it with football savvy, he showed very little.
Yeah,
especially for an experienced player.
Yeah,
so,
I hear you.
I'm not. We'll see what happens when he's got he's got a bye week and blah blah blah. And it doesn't. Have they said anything as we're recording this at 12:30 Central Time on Monday? Have they said anything about Van Dyke yet?
No, but he's done. I mean, he came out but
no doubt. And I know he was on crutches and like a full brace.
He had the ACL brace on.
Is that what that was? Okay.
Yeah, that's what you get. I mean, that brace, that's not all it's for, but I looked at that and it's like, that looks like a guy who's just coming out of ACL surgery.
so just, broader picture, right? I mean, the Tyler Van Dyke season is done. So it's not something we have to talk about anymore. I mean, I think had that not happened and had he played the whole game, how much changes in terms of their chances of winning? Would they have won the game? I don't know.
No.
I feel like not, because he'd have missed throws too. Maybe not as bad as Locke did, but there were all those other mistakes that happened. So, and they weren't, they were guys other than the quarterback. So, but broader picture, now our conversation is what's going to happen with, how's Braden Locke going to be for the next year? You started talking about it a little bit, but we don't have to talk about Van Dyke anymore.
No.
For better or worse.
Right.
This is what we've got from here on out.
All right. But to shift to something more positive, I would like to say cautiously that I think this was the best, opponent adjusted game performance I have seen from a Wisconsin offensive line in a really, in a really long time. They looked every bit. They did a very good job in that game. They really, there's no other way to put it. They had 1 or 2 plays that were losses, but that was, again, the 4th and 1 was because, Ashcraft just misses a block. That's kind of what he's supposed to come across and grab.
That it was like telegraphed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And it's just, so some of that stuff, but a lot of that was not on the line. The pass protection was solid. The run blocking was consistent. They did engineer a 17-play touchdown drive, which again, they're not supposed to be doing, but that's what they did against, I don't think that, not to get off on a big long thing, I don't think this is a great Alabama team. I think this team has, it's built around Milrow makes something happen and then you get an athlete that makes a play. That's what it is.
Right. Which is to say it makes the overall thing more frustrating because this was the time to get them.
Yeah.
But continue.
No, I'm with you. But the offensive line, I don't have a whole ton to say about it, but I felt from left to right as a whole, they looked quite good. The only thing, if I was to say anything that's a little weird, is Renfro is getting a little snappy. There's some snaps that are up.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There was. Yep.
I don't know if
Yep.
that's the height issue there because Van Dyke is significantly taller. I mean, Van Dyke is definitely a real 6'4", and we'll see what Braden Locke
Van
actually
Dyke is like Bart Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that same size.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. You can't take I can't take much away from him. And going against these Alabama defensive linemen and linebackers. I mean, come on. That's pretty good. Why would you compare it against last year against Ohio State, who had, probably the best front seven in the country?
Yeah, that group.
I thought they did well then too,
But I think they were better here. I really do. I think this line, I do feel like this is the best line for a while. Like, I'm actually willing to say that now.
Disagree.
I don't think the rest of the offense is particularly good, but I do think that offensive line is much more cohesive than it was last year. I mean, really, you don't have, and you got rid of the procedural stuff. Just set that aside.
That's what I was just going to say.
But they just
the only penalty was on Renfro, I think, right? That was just that one penalty,
and it was kind of a bad hold. If you watch the replay on TV, it was like, that really wasn't a hold.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was when they showed the replay. Everybody it generated the bull car horn chant.
Yeah,
at least it did for me.
Yeah, it was a little ticky tacky, but. Yeah. But what about the rest of the offense? Wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. I feel like in this game, that's where the lack of a difference maker showed up to me. I do really feel that way. I mean, I know Ches had a second week in a row with a big run and then a big fumble that basically is just born of contact. It was kind of weird. It was eerily similar to the one last week to me.
Well, and that was one of the main things that made me lose my voice. Is I want, like, Ches, sit down, you're done. And I was yelling that at top volume. You're done. Sit down. I don't want if you want to do short yardage, that's fine, but you're not doing this anymore. That to me was the play of the game. We just got done talking about losing the quarterback. Okay, fine. That was the play of the game. The crowd was still into the game. The game was close. It was tight. They were playing. Alabama missed a field goal too.
Yeah.
At that point, it was 7-3.
Yeah. No doubt.
And I just. It was probably the biggest unsound football play of that whole game because the guy didn't tackle him. He didn't force the ball loose. He just stood there, and Ches ran into him, decided to run him over, and lost the ball. The Alabama player, the defender, did not make a play. He just stood in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Ches didn't plant his foot, try to make a move, just decided to run over him. The guy might as well have been a freaking tackling dummy. Yes. Yes. It was that bad. It was, and I said that was one of the weirdest, dumbest fumbles I think I've ever seen.
It was helmet right to ball. It really was to me eerily similar to the one last week where the ball went flying through the air.
Flying up on the first carry of the game, right?
Yeah. Which they didn't lose. But I guess the problem you have now with Malusi is he's clearly the guy they trust the most.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he's good enough to justify that risk right now. Because I think also with him, like, I do think of all the running backs they have, he has the best sense of how to, like, he's the best at that cutback and go. He had one that was this far from a house play.
Yeah, no doubt. No, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
And I think, no, I don't know that you are. Right. I really don't know that you are. But I see he didn't get it. He ended up going like 10 or 11 yards on this cutback that I feel like last year or the year, especially last year before he got hurt, I think would have housed. But I do feel like he's lost like half a step. I mean, he's just had so many injuries, and there's been so much downtime in the past few years. And
he runs tough and fast, but there's no burst.
He's at his top gear right away. You're right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, right. Yes, yes, exactly. No
burst. There's not a cut and a go. Like, it's not like into the hole and then I see that backside and I hit another gear. It's like he's at that gear, but he's a 4-gear car, I guess, for lack of a better term. He doesn't have a 5th gear. He doesn't have that highway gear.
Nope.
And so but I don't know that, honestly, that what's behind it. I mean, no offense, people kind of forget with the Yakameli had a fumble too, and has had fumble
He
issues in the
he
past.
fumbled last. That's right. No, I
And
agree.
I don't know
I was kind of
that.
disappointed because I was kind of hoping he'd get it cleaned up.
I don't know
You know what I
that. Yeah, but I also don't know. I'm still not convinced that he's necessarily a guy that's yet an every down guy. And then Walker just seems like he's sort of stuck. But I think some of that is just what they ask him to do. Because in this one, I mean, how many times did they throw to Malusi in the flats for nothing? I mean, they had like 4 or 5 passes into the flats where he caught the ball. And I mean, these were like Braylon Allen numbers. Yeah, 4 for 12. That's not giving you much.
No, I know. Yeah, I know.
He is actually doing what I used to think Braylon Allen did. He's at 2.8 yards per reception. So they're not really getting anything out in the flats from Malusi so I don't know what they do at the back. I mean, I know you saw Dupree at the end. You saw Dupree when Yakameli got the wind knocked out of him too. But running back they want to lean on it, but I don't know if they have a guy to lean on. And then wide receiver for me.
Well, wait, before we move on from running backs, though, and for all the criticism that was there, and there were fumbles, you can't take them away, obviously. But for all of that, just to combine it with the offensive line, they still did overall rush for what 155 yards.
It was 149
against Alabama.
Yeah.
So. That's not bad. They should do better against weaker defenses, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, no. I mean, well, if you take Locke out of it, they did 155.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
Or 154. But I mean, it's really not bad on, 39 carries. I mean, it's not a big number, but it's 4 yards. It's chain moving.
It's effective, right?
Yeah.
And it was against Alabama.
Yes. And with your backup
just as much as it was against. Yeah, right.
So,
and with the backup quarterback, good call.
The thing I wanted to talk about was wide receiver. I don't need to talk about the tight ends too much because Rylan Nowakowski was questionable, was clearly limited. I think he played fewer than 10 snaps when I looked. So they used him in obvious, like down on the goal line situations. Yeah, he played 8 snaps. That's where I noticed him.
I did see him.
When they needed a block. But it was the Tucker Ashcraft show. I mean, he played 56 snaps. I mean, the only guys who played more snaps than him were Bryson Green, Will Pauling, and Braden. And aside from the offensive linemen, was Green, Pauling, and Locke. So they were, leaning on him quite a bit. But the receivers, oh man, that's the one that I think is really, I don't know what they do there. I think at this point, CJ Williams, they had spots, right? You had the Tretch, you had Pauling. Maybe maybe if they hit those throws, I'm looking at this differently. But and that's not on the receivers, obviously, they got open. But I do feel like they are still trying to work around issues on the outside. I mean, Vinny Anthony it seems like he's sort of displacing CJ Williams a little bit on the outside. I think that seems to be where it's moving.
I think so too. And he did have a pretty good catch.
Yeah.
I'm saying that after kind of criticizing him last week for being a complete non-factor.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, he wasn't that this week at all.
No, he played meaningful snaps. He had it was the effort after the catch, I think, that stuck with you probably because he fought on that play. But I just look at him and he's like a tweener guy, right? Like he's that size that's maybe just big enough to play on the outside, but kind of is, he's like the stretch 3 in basketball. Like he's kind of that tweener.
When you look at them from in the stands, he looks no bigger than Paul.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And so Bryson Green is Bryson Green. Bryson Green's fine. I've said this before. I'm not saying anything
new. I like
new.
Bryson Green. I like.
But outside of Bryson Green, I just feel like they're still hunting on the outside, and that's
absolutely.
There's nothing else I've said. I'm not allowed to say that anymore because I think I've said that 3 weeks in a row. But that's the part that sticks with me in the passing game that they're always trying to work around.
I'm looking at the snap counts and for some reason what I'm looking at doesn't have Tretch in there, but obviously Tretch is part of the game plan. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, he had
And
29.
if that pass did hit him, that would have been a big play. That would have been an explosive play.
Yep.
And you would have gotten to see what Tretch Kahuna can do.
I think that one might have been 6.
Exactly.
Because he straight up beat
been
that
40,
guy.
50 plus in there.
Yeah.
So Quincy Burrows, I don't remember seeing him on the field, but I'm showing him here with 9 snaps.
Yep.
So that's something if he's healthy and getting on the field. I don't see Chris Brooks Jr., who I know played last week. So I don't know to your point, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they do going forward.
I think what that just tells you is that Quincy Burrows is basically displacing Chris Brooks. I mean, that just tells you where they are in the order, which is what I would have guessed before. I think probably when we did our depth chart, that's where I had Quincy Burrows. But Quincy Burrows his snaps were mostly late. He was playing when the freshman, like Darian Dupree, has 8 snaps. Burrows had 9. I know Burrows played late. Same thing with Terrell Henry, I think had like 4 or 5 snaps late in the game, I noticed, at wide receiver. So I don't know what to make of it. Because they just put, at the end there, it was, that last possession or 2 in the fourth quarter, it was get him out there. Run him out there, and that's what they did. Defense. We haven't even touched the defense yet, and we're way into this show. We got to move along.
How much is there to talk about, though?
Well, here's my question for you. What was the most memorable play what was your favorite play from the defensive line on Saturday? That was my point.
Right. And the people can't see. I'm looking out the window here. I am really trying to come up with one. I will say this is that they did have a couple. They had a couple really nice third down stops.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in the beginning of the game too, which keeps the crowd into it.
Agreed.
Good thing. And there were a couple. I feel like there was a couple TFLs, but I don't think a defensive lineman was involved in any of them.
No,
I don't think. I don't remember.
So here, you want to hear the extent of defensive linemen recorded statistics, which doesn't mean everything for defensive linemen. We know that. But I do think it tells you a little bit of something in this game. You have, let's see, Ben Barton, 1 assisted tackle. Dylan Johnson, assisted tackle. Brandon Lane, solo tackle, I think late in the game. Is that all of it? Yes, that's all of it. That's all they got. Good. Again, recorded tackles don't mean everything, but I do think it just tells you, like, where were they factors? Like Elijah Hills, you never saw. Like Barton, you never saw. Kurt Neal, you never saw. I mean, they were neutralized in that game. But I think some of that, and again, this is why I don't think it tells the whole story. Some of that was not necessarily by design, but just philosophically what they were doing on defense. And I think that was for Jalen Milroe, which was we're rushing 3 or 4 and everybody stay in their rush lane and just contain him. And, outside linebackers set your edge. You saw Leon Lowry do that a few times and just try to contain a little bit and prevent him from getting big plays or extending too much, which they did for the most part until they didn't,
Gotcha. I was just going to say, how well do you think they did in doing that? Because it's Jalen Milroe. I mean, I thought they did I think they actually did a pretty decent job for the most part.
I mean, there's
the way that you just put it was probably best. Like they did it until they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the touchdown at the half. I mean, Hallman got pushed off, but I don't care.
No, but my brother is just like, how in the hell do you not see that coming? Like, how do you not see that coming? Like, that's the part that's another one I just don't get. I mean, the missed field goal is bad enough, especially when the dude hit that first field goal. Yeah, it felt like he could have hit that from like freaking Portage and it would have been good.
He's a funny kicker.
Just on the man.
He's a
really funny kicker. He's got no rhyme or reason. And I don't get it. I felt like, and I felt like when he lined up for that one, I had no doubt in my mind that he was going through. And and that's the other thing too, is the crowd's like, you kind of got over the Ches thing because on that field goal drive, they did, they were moving the ball just fine too, right? They were matriculating the ball down the field. If you would have gotten that, you would have given Alabama the ball back on a kickoff with maybe 25 seconds, 30 seconds, something like whatever it was, depending on the return, blah, 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 blah. But it would have been at that point, it would have been 14-6. And I mean, it's a 14-point swing.
I know.
And it's just, how do you not see that coming? It was so disheartening just when that happened. Like, the crowd was just like, we were sitting, there was a lot of Alabama people around us, and they were just like, yup. Like, yup. Oh man, it was so deflating. But my brother's just like, how do you not see that coming? And then, so a lot of our conversation then went to, like, Mike Dressel was the defense, or not the defensive coordinator, he was like the defensive backs coach with the no-fly zone. Like, what, dude, what is going on here? Like, what are you doing, man? I don't feel like he's elite as a defensive coordinator. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at those as you're gonna give up something. The timing on those was bad, obviously, just because of when it happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hallman was there. Hallman just gets out physicaled, and that's what's gonna happen when your best corner is 5'10", right? And like maybe 5'10". I mean, he looks small in that game. And you saw it even when he's out in space being forced to make tackles. He's not a lover of, and this isn't a knock, like, he's not loving going in to try to tackle these guys who've got size on him.
Right.
And that is not where he excels. And I think where he had some trouble in this game, quite clearly, is he's got a big body on him. He's left on his own because he was basically the high safety there. And they kept doing the same thing over and over. I mean, if you saw what Alabama was doing a lot, it looked like trying to split the safeties. And when they could catch the Badgers in like a cover one, they would put bodies out there and force them to decide. And that's how they scored on those big plays that I noticed. I mean, although I have to say, we were talking like at the top of the show about sort of like the overall feel of it. The one thing sort of that ties into my overall feel that I'll get to at the end was that there wasn't a lot of mystery for me in this rewatch. I discovered nothing. Like, I've never gone through a rewatch quicker where I was like, I don't need to look at that one again. I don't need to look at it, because a lot of times when I do a rewatch, I'll be like, oh, there's an interesting thing on that play that I didn't notice during the game, and I'll back up and I'll watch it 3 or 4 times, and then I'll try to watch for a pattern. There wasn't much in this. Like, I felt like I saw it all in the game.
No, me too. My schedule hasn't really allowed it for the rewatch for a variety of reasons, but I don't feel like I missed anything, and I didn't have a desire to do it. Like, go back and like, I have to fit this in.
And the only other thing on the defense I am trying to understand is Tackett Curtis, I will say, for what I think when I saw him on the field, I don't think that he had like an all-world day. Like, people really got into what he did.
TFL.
What I would say about Curtis was with him, I understood what they're trying to do better, which is basically what Tressel's defense is try to keep guys off the line of scrimmage so they don't get washed, but have them be lean enough and twitchy enough that they can navigate through traffic to make plays. And Curtis has that knack to sort of like see a seam or anticipate a seam to get in and make a play. And in the first half, he did. He over pursued a couple times. He washed out a couple times. But on balance, at least with him, compared to Jaheim Thomas and compared to Jake Chaney later, because Jake Chaney just totally blew it on that rush, on that touchdown. I don't know what he was doing, to be honest. There must have been a miscommunication with somebody because he took himself out of the play. I still don't know. But it was like a little bit of like, oh, okay, I see the proof of concept of what they're trying to do there. And if you have slightly more impactful defensive linemen, pair that with these guys who are a little bit backed off the line, they can find ways to make plays. Like, I get what the design there is. It allows them to be in space and be a little bit more reactive and be able to force the play a little bit more. So I will be curious to see what Tackett Curtis snap counts look like going forward, because basically at halftime, Chaney came in and played, I think, the entire third quarter. And then Curtis came back and spelled him before they pulled guys. Like, Curtis was playing with the ones in the fourth. So I'll be interested to see what happens there with guys like him and Allegro. I think Allegro probably doesn't know the defense as much, it seems like, or at least he isn't entrusted with as broad a scope of responsibilities. But I'll be curious to see where they go. But that's kind of more on my like 10,000 foot thing on this team. Or
Sure,
30,000.
sure. The only from spectating it, watching it live, I mean, Curtis was definitely he stood out for sure, and I think Thomas had a play finally where it felt like the Badger people around us were like, and myself were like, oh, finally we'd see him do something. I didn't think Daryl Peterson was that bad, but then other than that, like Lowry, Cheney, like I barely remember what number Leon Lowry is on the, I don't know what he's doing. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Lowry.
I expected a lot more.
I disagree with you on Lowry in this game because he did a lot more than I have seen any of those outside guys do. He and Witt, honestly, I finally saw, and they were being used differently. Again, they were contained guys. Mm-hmm. They used Pius and Lowry. Oh, they did it a couple times where they sat 5 yards off the line just waiting for Milrow. I mean, they rushed 3, and those 2 were just sitting there bracketing Milrow. And then their job was basically to cut down and contain. Lowry did that on a couple occasions, not so much sitting back, but was on the line and actually was that edge setting guy that you would expect that position to be. So for the first time, I saw him have an impact in a game. I mean, that stood out to me, but that stood out to me when I watched it the first time. I was like, oh, I actually see him now on the field. They are not gone. They have not disappeared. He was in a couple situations, he was the guy that drove him to Curtis. Like on a couple of those plays you see Tackett Curtis make, it's because Leon Lowry's outside and he's forcing Milrow to turn up. So I will push back on you on that one. Yeah, okay. Pius, on the other hand, who played, you could have told me John Pius played 10 snaps. That would have been what I would have guessed, somewhere like 10 or 12. But no, he played almost as many. They all played like in the mid-20s. And I can tell you, he had 23, which if you told me that Aaron Witt played 26 and he played 23, I wouldn't believe you. I mean, John Pius played one more snap than Jake Cheney. And I can't tell you, other than a couple times where I saw him sitting in that spy, I just didn't see him make a play. But otherwise, at least, they got kind of knocked around once the offense started to fold. But at least that was the first time I felt like this year that I sort of saw what they were trying to do.
Interesting.
But I mean, so to sort of, other than, I don't need to talk about, I don't know what the deal with Atticus Bertram's is. He and Vacos both have this weird thing.
I know. That's another one. He's so up and down.
Terrell Henry's now the punt returner, apparently, which I kind of get, but I don't know about the fair catch at the 5. Vinny Anthony's returning kicks. I do think it's the one thing that's kind of gone under the radar. They don't really have any kind of special teams return right now. None of those guys are showing much. Tretch was taking it from the back of the end zone and fumbling the ball. And Vinny Anthony, I guess, can field kicks as opposed to punts, but he's not exactly a sparky return guy. They don't have a return spark there. I think at this point in the season, I'm ready to kind of say I think that's they are what they are in that respect.
Well,
but
we didn't talk about it in the running backs. I don't know if one of the freshmen you might see them back there on kicks.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But I will say this to sort of close my thoughts on this game in terms of on the field. To your point, like when I watched this game, I felt like I understood, like I kind of get the three game arc they've had. They definitely held back and they definitely focused. Like I get that's what Fickle is. Like Fickle wants to win every game. I get that now. And in his mind, he's like, I've got enough for these first 2 games. I want to win this Alabama game. And he did for for whatever you want to say, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. He had this team like, okay, they have a puncher's chance. And
absolutely, no question.
They lost because of stuff that, the fumbles, missed passes.
It's not sound football.
Yeah, unsound football stuff that you're like, oh man, what do you... I mean, you can critique the coach on it however you want. I'm not defending, just to be clear, I'm not trying to get anybody to like buy in or get off or whatever. I just was sort of looking at it.
And I'm glad you said that too, because can you put that stuff on the coaching staff? I mean, I don't know, can you? If you want to.
If you want to.
You want to. Right.
But like I got what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to put pressure on the quarterback. It's, drop into coverage and basically run out out the clock on him and run him out of bounds when he tries to run. And again, that worked until it didn't. The offense was pretty much let's run the ball, and then they were going to figure out ways to take shots. They found ways, you saw stuff with Tretch and Pauling on the field at the same time. The two guys that I think they view as
noteworthy.
Their most explosive guys, and they found ways to create new looks. They really did. The fourth down stuff, like how aggressive he was on fourth down, I thought was interesting. I mean, this was a guy who said, they have more talent than I do. I have to play to win. It was far more aggressive, I think far more decisive than a lot of the stuff last year when you saw him get really tight late in the year. You saw him playing, coaching far more aggressively in this game. Like I'm not going to punt the ball away and, hope and pray and give them more chances of scoring. I got to score. Didn't work out, but he tried. I think the one that stands out to me, this is now 2 weeks in a row that I have seen. Well, I'll hold on that for a second because that kind of goes into my closing thought on the game. But I'm just curious because I wanted to talk about this. This game felt far better to me than the 22 game against Ohio State. The one that basically was the end of Christ. That wasn't the end of him, but that was the end of him. We just didn't know it yet. I felt like this was a team that went into the game with a pathway to at least give themselves a chance to win. And that game, I felt like that there wasn't. I mean, they went into that game and came out of that game and you're like, I have no idea what just happened.
There was that. There's the punt from the Ohio State 40 or whatever the hell it was. And then, it wasn't just that. It was defense and Jim Leonard, right? Like, that defense was terrible.
Right.
It was terrible. I mean, there was no hope in that game. I thought it was a good thing to put out there. I don't know how much more there is to say here, but I definitely don't feel that way. Yeah. You want to know what's crazy? As I honestly, when I was thinking about the Ohio State games of the past, this one actually felt like the 2013 one in the horseshoe for some reason. And I'll explain what I mean, but that's actually the one I was thinking of. There was, Melvin Gordon was pretty well bottled up. James White was pretty well bottled up. Like, those were stars, right?
Yeah.
And Stave had an okay game. There was the thing that probably would stand out and people would say, or, if you're listening, it'd be like, no, you're freaking nuts. Cause that was the game when Paberderis had like 230 yards on 9 catches. Okay, so there was that, and they were into the game. Like was it a fourth quarter game? I think it was.
They only lost by a touchdown.
No. It was a fourth quarter game. I'm trying to think. Did it go to the last possession?
Well, didn't the Badgers score late? I'll pull it.
I feel like they did, but I remember a very young Alex Erickson like skying up for a pass that was defended really well, and he almost flipped in the air kind of thing. And I remember it being like, wow, because it was Alex Erickson. But every time the Badgers did something in that game, it was JT Barrett touchdown. Mm-hmm. JT Barrett touchdown. And it was 4 touchdown passes. And it was just I know there was that really, really Badger play, with Chris Borland with the 4th and 1 stop, and he stuffs Carlos Hyde, right? You didn't get any plays like that, but I feel like they were playing the way Ohio State's offense was against that defense was the way that this Alabama offense was against this defense. Mm-hmm. That, okay, fine, you could control the ball, which the Badgers did. I mean, I think they still had more time of possession by a lot in this game. And in that 2013 game, they didn't make nearly as many mistakes. I don't remember any real mistakes that stood out. There were fumbles, whatever the case may be. I don't remember a lot of that. And that's what really stood out to me in this. But I feel like I said before, I go back to what I said before, only until the opening drive of the second half, when Alabama just comes out and runs right down the field and scores without any effort. And when the Badgers came back, got the ball, and you said it was 13 play for that touchdown?
17 play.
17 plays. They earned every bit of that drive.
Ridiculous.
They scored on 4th and goal with a clutch play. They ran 7 plays inside the 10 out of that 17, but it was still kind of like a game a little bit. And then after that, okay, fine. But up until that point, and I wasn't despondent or, that affected or anything on it, but I for most of that game, I felt like the Badgers belonged on the same field with Alabama.
Okay.
And that's the thing that I have more in common with that 2013 game. It's just when their offense is so far ahead of what Wisconsin does, and it's so far ahead talent-wise. And everything Alabama did on offense, they made those when they scored on their scoring plays, they all looked freaking easy. Like they just made it look so simple. And you're just 17-play drive, and then they get the ball back and go right up the field, man. Done. Yeah, so I don't know, but definitely not like 2022. I got nothing like that. And I don't, at the end of the day, I mean, when I was talking to people afterwards, like nobody was really that broken up or anything, or, and I think it's just nobody expected to win. So, they didn't win. Okay, fine. But I didn't get any kind of program angst from people. So, I was there. I'm not talking about the TalkAround line. I'm not talking about, this or that particular person, but I didn't get that feeling.
All right. Well, first off, before we get emails, it was Braxton Miller, not JT Barrett. 20.
Yes, Braxton Miller.
Doesn't matter.
Braxton.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But just that way, I don't get like we don't need that.
It was Braxton Miller. Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, not important. The only thought I have, maybe that to sort of close on this game in particular, and it sort of branches me out going forward. I do think there is more frustration around this performance than I think you're giving credence to, for lack of a better term, because
and I'm only saying that like right after the game, walking around with people. Yeah.
People were there was a degree of tension if you looked at the feeds, so to speak, and a lot of anger and a lot of frustration in that one. And it's definitely, to me, this game ends like, the way I would describe it is like coaches have 3 acts with a school, and you are at the end of the first act with a coach at a school, which is we have reached the end of give this guy time to build up what he needs and get his guys. Like people are done with that. Like that ended because it's like, look, you've had this quarterback here for 2 years and he looks like he's, doesn't know what's going on, right? That's people's perspective.
Absolutely.
You don't really seem to have any wide receivers. They haven't brought in really freshman wide receivers who complement this offense. They brought in more Tretch types. Like Kyneberry Johnson is another slot guy. It is not an outside guy. You look on the defense and they brought in these outside linebackers who really, again, I saw Leon Lowry do something, but it was a very defined role. Like it was a much more limited role than you'd expect a guy like that to have in this defense based on what you heard. You're seeing a lot of ineffectiveness there. And yeah, like he is definitely it's gone from the majority of people are let's wait and see, like let's get this guy to do his thing. Now we are in that act 1 of his career is done. We are in act 2, which is you need to start improving your team. You need to demonstrate, because you go from act 2, which is your sort of, you go from 80-20 in terms of support to the 60-40. And then you hit act 3 when you start to lose people, and then you get to the end of act 3 where you're like Billy Napier or whatever you want to use right now. But like Billy. He has moved into that next phase, which is people are starting to question and like I think, and there are fair questions to ask, which, he was asked in his post game. Jesse Temple basically asked him, what it was some version of what is this team's identity? Like, what do you think this team's identity is? And he says, well, I think we can block and I think we can run the ball because I think we have a good offensive line, right? I mean, he said, like, if we were looking at something that we can do, it's that. But as he started to answer Jesse, he started to sort of meander's not the wrong word, but he just started to talk about, now this team has to react because, they got their butt kicked and, it's how do you react? I just talked to those guys about like, what happens here when you're 2-1, everyone has expectations. And if you're 4-0 or 2-1 or 2-2, how do you react? How do you lead? And he starts giving this answer about how they handle adversity. And he's getting visibly angry as he answers the question. And it wasn't directed at Jesse. It was definitely a guy who is, for the second year in a row, I feel like really angry with where his team is at and where he sees a lack of progress with who they are. And I do now, we talked about it a little bit that last year when it happened, but we sort of just brushed it off. Like maybe the Bicknell thing was a canary in a coal mine, because I do feel like you're looking at a team that there seems to be some kind of fundamental tension between what he wants to do and what Longo wants to do. And the fact that the offensive coordinator, who I'm assuming your sell was, you come in and here's the keys to the kingdom, right? That's what gets him to leave an NFL-bound quarterback that's just going to make him look good and get him a head coaching gig if he wants it. You tell that guy a year after he comes in that his personal sort of like consigliere at offensive line coach is out the door, and you bring in a new guy, and the offensive line is significantly better. I'm not doing a causation correlation thing there. I'm not I'm not saying that's what happened. Like, I'm not tying the through line, but I do feel like there may be a fundamental conflict with those guys in terms of how they're figuring out how to work together. And that to me is an issue he seems to have to deal with. And then the other part, for the rest of the season, he's got 2 weeks to get Braden Locke ready, right? He's got 2 weeks for Braden Locke to get a 9-game audition. But the other part I am curious about is how much is he going to give freshmen a run? Like, how much run? You can't, this is college. You can't just declare yourself rebuilding and trade everybody away at the deadline. Like, this isn't, it doesn't work that way. And you can't bench your,
pretty close year to year, but
you can't bench your seniors, right? Like, the team will, you just can't, that's not the way college football works. Like, the team will fall apart. So I am curious how he massages in and how much he pushes to massage in some of these younger guys going forward. You know, Tackett Curtis looks like he should be playing. I mean, he just looks like he should be in the rotation. There's no reason he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
And I also feel like he's a guy that was basically a high school recruit too. Like, you know, I feel like he's a second year Badger almost, or a second year guy on this team. You know what I mean? Like, he's a foundation piece.
Yeah, and then, you know, it's like Dupree. I mean, they put Dupree in that game, you know, not just when Yakameli got hurt, but at the end there. Like, there was a decision to put him in that game and get him some snaps. So how much are you going to see him play? How much are you going to see, you know, Xavier Lucas play? He played in that game. They have him down for snaps. I don't remember seeing him.
Yeah, absolutely. 13. And I don't remember seeing him either. I don't remember seeing him at all. And I was talking about it with people like this. We have a really good freshman here. But he got hurt last week. I don't know if he's playing. So he did play.
So
13 snaps was more than last week. Or what he had? No, it was 26 last week, right? So
yeah, no, he basically was a starter last week.
Yeah.
Played a lot more than RJ Delancey. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And you know,
RJ Delancey got toasted.
Yes, he did. And he played all of 3 snaps. But my question is just that, like, what is he charting forward this year? Because he has to start showing something is getting better. I really do. And he has to start thinking in terms of, you gotta massage that in some way, because that's what changes. And it's not a bad time for a bye week. It really isn't.
I agree.
To maybe reset this thing and maybe change how this season is approached. Because my question for you, and we can do this before under the radar player of the game, just because we're not going to do big games in the B1G. We've talked too long already. Where are 4 more wins on this roster on this schedule to get you to a bowl?
Well, after last week, I feel a lot better about Purdue.
Yep. I mean, it's Purdue, Northwestern are 2, because Northwestern does not look very good.
No, they don't.
That gets you to 4 games.
Lightning in the bottle, and I don't think what happened last year is. I don't think that's going to happen this year. So let's take Northwestern.
Okay, so that's 4. Now that leaves you to find 2 more between at USC, at Rutgers, hosting Penn State, at Iowa, Oregon, at Nebraska, hosting Minnesota.
Should we put down the Gophers?
I think that's the most likely. So that's
out of what's left. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 3 wins. I mean, like, I think we'll know more about Minnesota, I guess, against Iowa this coming weekend. Like, that'll give us a better indication.
That is this week. Yeah, that is.
So that leaves you with, you need a win from USC, at Rutgers, Penn State, at Iowa, hosting Oregon, at Nebraska.
Well, Rutgers, gotten a lot of love, but I don't think what they are quite yet, right?
That's this week too.
How good they really are,
right? They're playing Virginia Tech. Like, I think that's the thing to watch this bye week is going to be, how does Rutgers play against Virginia Tech? How does Minnesota do against Iowa? Because I'm not kidding you. I think this is a team, just the way that he sort of got animated. This is a team, I don't know.
On the
I don't
brink.
know. I don't know. I just wonder. I don't know how much of that is team on the brink versus this is a dude who is just so competitive and he is trying to win every game. He doesn't care that his team is not supposed to be in this game. Like he played this season to this point for this game. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what he did.
Sure.
I mean, they broke out
They take
everything
away
in this
from them.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing as Ohio State last year. Like they brought everything they could to that game. Now, last year after they lost, that's when that team collapsed.
It was a collapse, right?
So they go from this is, frying pan to the fire because USC looks pretty good.
Yes.
So it's going to be let's see what they look like. If they beat up on Michigan this week, it's like, ooh.
you do have a break.
Yes.
With the bye.
Yes.
So there is that. But yeah, USC, I don't know. I don't know. I was gonna say to you, like, what do you think will happen against USC? I don't know.
No clue.
I don't expect to win.
It's gonna be. It all comes down to how much can Braden Locke look more comfortable and just give them enough to balance it. Because I don't think their defense is terrible. I don't.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it's great.
It's not as good as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So, all right. Before we wrap up this game, under the radar player of the game. Who do you have?
I'm going with Aaron Witt again.
Okay.
And the main reason I say that is there was a point in the game where either they were showing him on the scoreboard or whatever, but he looked like a junior war daddy. Like maybe move him to defensive line or something, but he looked like a war daddy. And they don't have a war daddy on that defensive line right now.
No, you know what? He basically is a 4-3 defensive end. That's what he is. And I think to your point, like I don't think playing him at defensive, basically like a functionally as a defensive end, just run a 4-man front with him there. Like I think he's just going to keep playing more. I really do.
Yeah.
Because I do think the other three and this is going to sound like I'm contradicting myself in a minute. Well, he's in my list. Anyways, I don't think the other three to me are largely interchangeable. So I don't feel a need. I don't think Daryl Peterson needs to be on the field. Like I think he's maybe slightly better than the other two, but I'm just not, you're not getting me with that one. I realize now, like he's the same player he was last year. It's the same guy that used to make me kind of pull my hair out. So
yeah, despite clearly hitting the weight room.
Yeah.
Between this year and last, but yeah, I totally agree with you.
So yeah, no, I get your pick. So I was thinking about this one. I was thinking about Leon Lowry, quite honestly, because he did do unheralded things in terms of, he did the same thing Aaron Witt was doing. Like that, they kind of were filling the same role, which was being that end guy. He was doing it more as an edge rusher versus the, to your point, defensive end style of doing it. But I'm going to put him aside since he did Witt. I am going to go with Preston Zachman because quite frankly,
he was my second choice.
You could make a case, he blew a coverage on one of the long passes. But again, he was the single high safety and he had to pick one dude. It didn't matter. That was play design. That wasn't him. But he made plays down around the line of scrimmage. He made plays on the edge with Milroe to keep him contained. And for a guy who I have long considered the least athletic on the defense, he looked perfectly at home in that game. He really
sure did. Yeah, he was my second choice. He was my second choice. And I was telling people, like when we got there, it's, again, out of town people, right? I'm like, keep your eye on 24. He's the guy you're going to want to watch. He's the best player on their defense, but he's the guy you want to keep on. But you want to watch 14 too. He makes plays. So yeah, he was my second one.
Yeah. And the only other one I was thinking about, which I didn't pull the trigger on, but maybe I should have, Forkareen. Forkareen is a really complete corner. I don't think he's as good a coverage guy as Hallman in terms of the technical stuff, but he's bigger. He can make contact and he can tackle and he can cover. I really think he's a good, it's too bad. I think this secondary is probably one of the best secondaries they've had in a long time, but you're never going to remember that just because the defense has got so many warts. I mean, Hunter Wohlers.
No, and certainly not from this game. I mean, it was 42 points.
I know.
And a couple passing. That last touchdown, to the tight end, that was flipping ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Well, that was the one that they split Zachman,
Yeah.
They ran two of them out. They actually had a really nice replay. I mean, one tight end man clears out, and then the other one is just there. So
it was so wide open, and it was if anything wasn't deflating enough. But it is kind of funny that we pick in all defensive players of the game where they gave up 42 points.
Yeah, I hear you, but I can't kill them for doing. Like, I think the reality is when you do not have impactful defensive linemen, it hurt in this game. Like, they didn't have a way to create any kind of contain. So
right, and that brings me back to that 2013 Ohio State game. It was like I other than that, I felt like they belonged on the field at least.
Yeah. All right, we're well over an hour, which is I think warranted because
I think so too.
We have a bye week coming,
right?
And we're not going to do a show next week unless something crazy happens, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless something crazy does happen. But I will say this too, like the Act 1 thing, this justified an hour because I mean this was 5 years in the making.
Yeah,
this was the opportunity. I think I said that I imitated Paul Christa. I think it was like Paul from Madison, because we didn't take advantage of the opportunity. But like this was the chance for the program win, chance to make an impression, chance to get back into the national conversation that they haven't been in for a while. So no, I think it's warranted.
All right. So why don't we say we'll be back in 2 weeks? You get your voice back.
Maybe.
Hydrate, little lemon in the water.
I'm in New Orleans, man. I don't know if that's going to happen between today and tomorrow.
Hydrate.
I have been hydrating. I wanted to get underwater, but I didn't want to walk away.
All right. Well, Pedialyte, friend.
Yeah. No, I don't feel that dehydrated. All right, whatever.
All right. Until the next time, my friend. All right.
Until the next time, for sure.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Enjoy the conversation? Head on over to buckaroundpodcast.com to find all the ways to connect with the show, links to our Patreon page, and feeds for every major podcasting platform. We want to thank each and every one of our patrons. You make this podcast possible. This has been the Buck Around, Badger football analysis from a fan perspective.